We are. Good morning, fellas. I want to thank you again. This is our 5th day in our program, and again, I am really excited. I want to show you today on how I use these same techniques that I am teaching you, or that I'm striving to teach you, to build my own business out here. And the business that I am striving to build during this era, right? We always have to be shifting, and our businesses and our decisions always have to relate to what we say is important. And one of the things that I've got this, excuse me, I was having this thing video because while I was waiting for you guys to come on, I was making another video, and I really want to show you what that video looks like, because yesterday I got a question from both Trey and from Jay, who mentioned that they had an interest in wanting to be a part of the clothing business. And I gave them my word that I would do some research and try and help them along those ways. So that's an action step. Well, I wanted to really record every step of the way, because I really believe that if you want to build something, we always have to be thinking about, how am I going to overcome the challenge? How am I going to do that? And so today's course is really about that. It is about taking action steps. It is about saying, if I say I want to do something, I have got to demonstrate, okay, well, how did I get there? And one of the ways that we can think about that is, I wish I could, it's hard to share my screen with you, because I know if you're sitting in the back, you can't see the screen. But so I'm going to just paint the picture for you. I was sitting in an office a couple of days ago. Even though we're in a pandemic, there are still things going on. And in the office that I was in, it was kind of high off the ground. And there were contractors building a new structure just adjacent to where I was. So I could look down on the window and see what was going on. Now, they have a big fence around the construction site. So if you're on the ground floor, you can't see what's going on. But if you're on a high floor and you look down the window, what you see are a bunch of people. Well, first there was demolition going on, so they had to tear down the building that was there before, and then they had to haul all the debris away, and then they had to dig the trenches and lay the pipes and lay the concrete and do all the underground work. And I see Ryan there, who wants to be a welder. You see guys welding, and you see all this type of heavy construction that's going on. What you don't see at that stage of the journey is what it's eventually going to become. If you're on the ground floor, all you see is this fence. And because I'm on a high floor, I can look down and see all the work that's being done in advance that nobody's going to be thinking about. What is that work that's going on? It's the incremental action steps. And if you think back about what does it take to build a skyscraper, as I was doing while I was sitting down there looking, it's not very different from what it takes to overcome the struggle of a jail sentence or a prison sentence. What do you got to do if you want to build a clothing company while you're sitting there in jail? You got to do the same thing that developer had to do when he built a building. You've got to take a series of action steps that nobody is going to know, nobody is going to understand later once it's built. Once it's built, all they can see is this beautiful glass building. Okay, but if you want to go through an exercise with me, we can kind of reverse engineer, as we were talking about yesterday, what are the steps that have to be taken along the way. And this is going to relate directly to Trey's question and Jay's question about, how do I sow seeds that will lead to the better outcome that I want to do. So let's just try to reverse engineer. How does a skyscraper or a jail where you're sitting right now, how does this entity or this structure come into play? Because it all starts with nothing more than some leader defining success. They start off and they say, this is what I want to build. I want to build, in this case where I was looking at, I want to build a skyscraper. I don't know who that person was, nor do I know what motivated or prompted him. It probably started even before the idea. He probably recognized that enough people want to rent property in this area, and so he started doing some research that nobody sees, okay? He started doing research and figuring out, how much do people rent a building for? Or he started looking around and figuring out, well, what is the price of dirt around here? Or he started figuring out what are interest rates? How much does it cost to borrow money? Or he started to figure out how long will it take to build this building? And all of that starts long before he ever acquires the asset. It starts long before he ever spends anything more than his time. He's investing in himself. He has an idea of what he wants to build. Just like Trey has an idea that he wants to build a clothing company. Just like Jay has an idea of recalibrating his life and figuring out where he wants to go. These are action steps. But those action steps should relate directly to what we've been teaching in this course. They should relate directly to how we define success. They should relate directly to the goals that we have to achieve along the way, the incremental goals. They should relate to our 100% commitment to making this happen. And they should relate to having a vision of what we are going to achieve. That's what our aspiration is, which we covered yesterday. But none of that matters if we don't take these incremental action steps. And this guy, whoever it is that started to develop this building, he started out with an idea. He started out with a vision of what he would create, but then he had to go through all of these little goals. And then he had to start doing the work. He had to, first of all, go and persuade somebody to give him the money to invest this. And that requires what? It requires that person to invest time and energy in learning how to communicate in words, sentences, and paragraphs exactly what he wants to achieve. That's the reason that it's so important to stay focused on GED classes and developing skills in writing and developing skills in communicating ideas in sentences and paragraphs, because you've got to be able to persuade somebody why they should partner with you. If you can't make that persuasive case, you never really get off the ground. But the developer understood that. So at some point long ago, when I was making really bad decisions of selling cocaine or committing crime or hanging around people that were committing crime, that guy was probably making better decisions. He was probably learning how to write well, how to learn to communicate well, how to communicate in a way that would teach and inspire people. And then he practiced his craft, and he eventually got to the point where he understood business, and he understood what people needed, and he understood how to solve a problem. Those are all action steps. And they're action steps that I think each one of you can be taking right now. But one thing I can say for certain about these guys who go out and succeed, they are not afraid to ask for help. And what does that mean, to ask for help? It doesn't mean, hey, let me take something from you in order for me to be stronger. It means, how do we work together to create something of more value? How do we create something of so much value that it makes the entire community and the entire society better? And how does this live longer and bigger than us? And in order to learn that, we've just got to look at people who leave the clues for us and show us how they do it. That developer, I may never meet this person that I saw building this building. I may never really get an opportunity to interview him and ask him, how did all of these things start? All we're going to see is someday this building will be completed. It will be a completed structure. And there may be a media event about this new skyscraper and how beautiful and shiny it is. But nobody's going to know all of the hard work and the incremental action steps that took place years beforehand. And if you continue in this course to watch the videos where I am interviewing chief executive officers of businesses that are talking about how they built their businesses, or successful people in any domain that they are in, when I'm interviewing those guys, all of them are going to be talking about the hard work that they did that nobody saw. Right now, while you're sitting in a jail, it's time to start doing the hard work. It's time to start taking the action steps. If you want to be a welder like Ryan, you ask those kinds of questions and say, this is what I want to do. What can I be doing right now to begin building? So you start sowing that seed. And you say, well, I can't really practice with a welding machine right now, but I can absolutely learn math and English better than I know right now. And that will accelerate my progress so that you can become like that developer who's in a better position to persuade somebody to partner with him and build something. Because it's all about telling the story. Every one of you guys right now can begin telling the story of the next chapter of your life. This is the first inning of a 9-inning baseball game. This is the time for you to be thinking about what you are going to achieve. This is a time when you begin telling the story of the hard work that you've done and the goodwill that you are showing because you don't want to go back to that community that results in this treadmill of failure. So I just want you to be thinking about that. You may be sitting in a building right now that is brightly lit, that I can see the jail, I can see the rails up there, I can see the doors on the wall, I can see the tile on the floor, I can see the chairs. Every one of you guys, as an exercise, as an action step, can start reverse engineering and figuring out, how did this structure come into place? How did that chair that Johnny is sitting on right now, who is the one who started this business that started this chair? How did that begin? It didn't begin by just Johnny sitting on a chair. It began with somebody who had an idea and defined success. Somebody set the goals in place of what they would have to do to build a factory, to create a sales machine that would deliver that chair, and then to go ahead and execute on the plans with 100% commitment, holding himself accountable along the way to build a business that goes on and sustains and grows. And that's what we are doing as human beings. We are building our lives. We have to be the CEO of our own life because we have to live with reality. And here's reality. When you serve time in jail, when you serve time in prison, you've got the problem of not knowing what is going to come. But you can't expect somebody to give you a job. You can't expect somebody to give you credit. You can't expect people to welcome you into open arms. What you can expect is people to say, I don't trust you. I don't believe in you. I think that you are a felon. I don't want you in my neighborhood. Don't complain about it. Just own it. That's what's coming. But if you want to succeed, you got to look at that and say, I am going to succeed anyway. And that means being willing to do the hard things. And the hard things is to stay in that GED class and figure out, how am I going to learn English better? How am I going to develop skills in math better? Because I know hard things are coming. But if I want to build and sow seeds for a better life, you've got to be able to tell that story of how it all started. You've got to be able to say, see yourself someday as the success that you want to become, that you deserve to become. That's what this course is really all about. And it's the reason I say, hey, let's not just talk about it. Let's not just say we want to be successful. Let's actually expose ourselves to a challenge and a test. And I won't be the guy I'm not the parole board. I can't do anything to get you out of jail. I have no power or control over your sentence or anything along those lines. But what I do have is the experience of having climbed through jails and prisons for 26 years. And I do have the experience of figuring out what seeds do I have to sow to begin building something. And I do have the ability to be 100% honest with you and not fill you with happy talk or happy ears about what's going to come. It's not going to be easy. You've got to climb. But if you start laying the groundwork right now, you start digging the ditch, you start laying the pipe, you start demolishing the structures that existed before you, you can start building the entity that you want to build. And I'm not only going to be talking with you about it, I give you my commitment. And it's a commitment that's backed up by what you already see, a series of videos from successful people who are all going to communicate the message of how they became successful. And I will keep reaching out and keep trying to show you that this is not the Michael Santos message. This is not the prison professor's message. This is the message of life. The more you understand where you are, The more you understand where you want to go, the more qualified and skilled you become to restore confidence and to build. And today, now that I've given you that little preamble, I want to ask, because we've already done it. I've already been here. I can't believe how fast the time goes. I've already been on here for almost 20 minutes. I'm going to stop and I'm going to ask a question. If there's anybody that has something to say, and I don't care if anybody does or not, but afterwards, I'm going to tell you what I have done as an action step to bring the answers to both Trey and Jay, who asked me, how do you build a clothing company? How do I do that? What are some books that I should read? Well, I want to do more than just recommend it. I want to show you the action steps that I take. And I don't know if it's going to work, but I will definitely do that for you in the next segment. But I'm going to stop right now and see, does anybody have any questions that we can go over to understand values, goals, attitude, aspiration, or today, action?